You can't be accused of cheating if there's no rules. Like, I mean, it's solid logic, you know? Uh, it's that time of year where rule sets are coming out and we get to watch everybody fight on the internet about why they're terrible and why they're great and why they're a little bit of both. Um, but we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about rules because, well, we had one of those happen last week with local track releasing rules. I was waiting because they said tentative, and that has since disappeared. I don't know if the rule set has since disappeared, but the post where they mentioned it has. So we are actually going to look real quick if they still have the rules up too. So probably. But anyways, that is what we're talking about tonight is rules. And okay, so 2020 coming soon, 2025 class rules. All right, so let's go to their homepage where they had posted. Nope, they have completely removed them. Okay. The other thing I think is really, really funny. Recently, I have watched because that rule set came out and it was supposed to be an alliance rule set. It's supposed to be all these tracks working together, and then some of those other tracks were like, "Hey, we never agreed to those," and a couple front wheel drive guys were losing their minds, and watching the VA guys just look at that front wheel drive guys, oh yeah. And now I'm watching all of them argue over street stock rules and getting so upset and like, why can't they get it right? And we could travel everywhere if they would all just agree on a rule package. Yeah, that's how we feel. Right? Now, having said that, I do want to know, has your track or your series released their rules yet for next year? Like I know SCDRA, their season doesn't technically end until February. So, they might have like some minor changes that are going to happen, but they're not going to announce it for a minute. VCTS, I don't think they've released, wearing the old school VCTS shirt, by the way. I'm on the back of this shirt. So funny story about that. But what's up, Marvin, buddy? Chucky. And Joe says, who follows rules anyway? Listen, it's more of a guideline, but I am curious if your local track has released the rules or when they've said they will release the rules. I am honestly one of those guys. Like, I would love, what's up, Woody? I would love to see the rules come out early where, like, hey, I know we just got done racing. Here's next year's rules, right? But I am realistic in that if a racetrack can release their rules, like here in Michigan, right? Our season ended pretty much at the beginning of October. There's been a few tracks that have dragged it out a little bit, tried to race, maybe have an enduro or something. Steve Vor's on here asking where we are going. Hey, Ron, they've already said we're going back to Florida. And what's up, Steve? But most tracks are done by October, right? First, second weekend in October. I am a realistic person. If rules are released by mid-November, end of November, like I, as a realistic human being, think that's okay. It gives everyone at the track to have a little bit of time to relax, not think about the racetrack, and then, kind of come together, hopefully gather information and, make an informed decision on some rules. I can tell you that if we get to January and a track or series hasn't released their rules, I'm one that's like, okay, what's going on? Like, what the hell's the deal? And if a track does, like some have locally, where they release a set of rules and then release a set of rules and then release a set of rules and then like 4 weeks before the season starts, they come up with their final revision. Like, that upsets me. Like, as a racer, that upsets me. So now I will say this. If you are watching this and you are a track promoter or you are a tech guy, or you have a say in writing the rules in your track, if I say something tonight that upsets you, my opinion. However, reach out to me. I'm willing to A, explain anything I've said, or B, help you write your rules, help you be the technical advisor on your rules, something like that, or point you to somebody who can. Okay. I don't have all the answers. I am the smartest guy in the room right now because I'm the only guy in the room right now. Okay. Because it's just me in here. Right. But I do not believe I am the smartest person alive. I do not believe I have all the answers. I hear it all the time. Well, you get your own racetrack. Yeah, if I had the money to buy a racetrack, I probably would. But I don't. I just race at them, and I race at a bunch of them, right? So I'm willing to help as much as I can, okay? If you have tech guys that need some training, I'm hoping to be able to do something like that before season starts. If you want some help writing the rules or whatever, I'm willing to help. So keep that in mind. We might get a little harsh tonight, but I'm willing to help. I want to help. I want to make things better. I'm not just trying to crap on people. Okay. Now, having said that, right? I am a firm believer in rules and having rules to try to even out and add parity to the class. 100%. I still hold records for Run What You Brung shows, and I have the capability to do some really crazy stuff if that ever happens. Like, if anybody has a truly Run What You Brung, we can do some stuff. I know there's one coming up this next year with NCTS and stuff like that. That's in the middle of the season. Like, I'm talking like a true Run What You Brung class. Like, okay, I got some parts, right? They're not legal any other time of year, and I'm not building it just for that. So, like, I could be all for a Run What You Brung class. However, I am smart enough and I am racer enough to know that having a set of rules benefits everybody. Okay. Real quick, Joe says, "Does this cabinet come from an old VW racer?" Yes, it did. That one did. That one did, and that one did. They all came, but yeah. So I like rules. I like rules for this class. I personally believe in a rule set that would, well, it wouldn't have slowed down the old car because it raced under that rule set. It would slow down the plans for the new car, but they've since taken away the rules I like, so it's not a big deal. I'm going to tell you guys and gals, I'm going to start this out with, I believe that racetracks, traveling series are a different animal. Traveling series should be, okay. I believe a racetrack should have one of two types of rule sets. You should either have an ABC format or you should have two classes, one of which being an outlaw, one of which being a stock. You can call them whatever you want to, however you want to, but I truly believe that you should do one of those two styles of rules. Reason being, no, don't restart now. I'm in the middle of something. No, don't update now. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, I believe that either or could work for your racetrack. I believe having an ABC style format works really well for racers who are willing to not be the fastest car. And I know that sounds goofy, but I see this all the time because we have a few tracks around here that are ABC style. And what ends up happening is you get some guys and gals who they don't want to run 5th through 8th in the A main. They want to win the B main. They'd rather win the B main. And so they either slow their cars down or sandbag to do that. I've seen throttle stops, I've seen intake restrictors, I've seen all sorts of stuff like that where they're just trying to slow their cars down some so they can run the B main. And then they get mad when they get put in the A main because now they've locked themselves into a slow time. They can't even uncork the car and run it out. Now, I do understand not everybody wants to go finish 10th every night. I truly do understand that. I get it. Like, I go to win, right? So I understand that. But the reason I like the ABC style is I could have a bone stock car with a bunch of safety stuff in it, and I can go out and I can race. And I might run against guys who have bone stock cars like me, or I might race against guys that have great big motors, but they can't drive. Or I might race against guys who have less horsepower than me, but the car handles really well. I don't have to worry about if I have a little bit slower car, I don't have to worry about going out and getting absolutely drugged because, well, this is what the rules say, right? But there should be a brick of time for people to race in, right? It can get a little convoluted at the top where you've got a couple really fast cars, a couple fast cars, and then like the pack starts, right? But if I'm a slower guy, I like those rules a lot of times because it gives me somebody to race against. And I could run old takeoff tires. I could run Falcon Azenias that I don't have to worry about shaving. I can add a little camber. If I can't get the push out of the car, I could throw a coilover on the right rear. I could do small little things to the car as my budget allows, as time allows, stuff like that. It's chilly in here. I got a little electric heater over here. So you can see me like dip my hands down below the table and all that. But it allows me to do little stuff. I can take weight out of the car when I want to. You know, I can try different tires because maybe I'm a B main car this week because I've got good tires. And then, well, I can't get the Hoosiers anymore. I got to go back to my old tires. I can run the C main. It allows this flexibility and this movement. And as you're learning and growing and getting faster, I really like that idea. I've raced ABC style for a while. I like it. I really do. And I think it works well. But if you have 3 guys that are trying to go fast and you have 35 guys who are unwilling to, you know, finish mid-pack in the A or count a B main win as a win, you're going to have problems. And that's what we run into at one of our tracks locally. You know, we talked about going ABC. Well, you know, I can't compete. Brother, you were running the B main and the C main in the stock class last year. Like, you ain't going to win the stock class, let alone win the outlaw stuff, right? Well, I have to buy tires and I have to buy rims. No, you don't. Well, I have to build a big motor. No, you don't. Well, I have to do this. No, you don't. You want to because your ego says that you have to try to win the A. But your budget says, brother, you're a C main car, right? The reason that unwillingness to read the rules and say, hey, I can run the B main and I don't have to change anything. Or I could run the C main and I don't have to change anything. Like, it works really, really well, right? And the beauty of this is that tech is very minimal. Our local track, Springport, I'm not going to say their rules are the best because there's a couple things in it I don't like. Like, for example, last year, in the last few years, they don't have a weight rule. At least I don't remember them having a weight rule. So it doesn't matter what you have. You don't have to weigh a certain amount for anything. And I personally believe, you know, a minimum weight and, you know, different weights for different, you know, engine capacities, horsepower capacity, I don't believe is a bad thing at all. But Missy says there is a weight rule. Okay. So there is a weight rule out there. So that's not one of them, right? But Springport's rule set is like 2 pages. That's it. It's 2 pages. It's not some 35. Now that doesn't, they do have like a 5-page or something like safety and like procedure thing that's on all the rules. It's not this 35-page document that's so hard to, like, it's simple, you know, it's 2 pages. It's simple to tech, right? And the beauty of it is, if I have a stock car and I threw a coilover on, I don't have to worry about trying to sneak it through. It's legal. I don't have to worry about the tires. They're legal. I don't have to worry that I wanted to put a header on. It's legal. Oh man, I was finally able to afford some camshafts for my motor. It's legal, right? That's why I like the ABC. It can be very simplified. Now, I do understand that there are racetracks that have, you know, one of our local racetracks had about 10 outlaw cars, and they had like 35 stock style cars. And I understand not wanting to upset 35 versus 10. But the best way to do that is to keep 2 classes. And one of them can be your outlaw, 2 pages of rules, very, very simple. The other one is more of a stock style class. No motor swaps are allowed. You have, you know, you can't cut things out. You know, you can't run aluminum bodies. Like you can't, I honestly, in a stock class, I'm a fan of not allowing bumper covers. Like it has to be stock bodied, stock hood, stock fenders, stock doors, stock quarters, stock roof, stock bumpers. I am okay with that. And you guys, well, it's going to cost me. My 1993 Acura Integra, you know how hard it is to find a bumper for that? I don't care. I'll be honest with you. When I see those style rules, if you buy a car that is so rare that the bumper cover is hard to find, I'm sorry. It is what it is. That's a downside to racing a 93 Integra, right? Neons, they're getting harder and harder to find, but I could still go find 10 bumper covers. And I wouldn't pay for probably any of them. But I can go get bumper covers front and rear with the foam in them for 15, 20 bucks, right? Well, Todd, where are you doing that? I can point you to like 3 or 4 U-pull yards around here. Okay. Cobalts are the same way. You know, some of your Hondas are harder to find, right? But I don't believe you should be able to build an advantage by taking a bunch of weight off the car, right? If you want to put aluminum over your stock body, make them look a little better, okay. But I'm a firm believer in that, right? Stock exhaust manifolds, stock intake manifolds, no swapping. And again, no motor swaps. You know, you're not putting a K-Series in anything that didn't come with a K-Series factory. You're not putting a 2.4 in a Neon. The GM stuff gets a little iffy just because, you know, I don't believe you should have to be stock for the VIN, right? So like if I have a Dodge Neon, right, I believe that you should be allowed to have a single cam or a dual cam, and it doesn't have to match the VIN, right? Because maybe all I can find is a single cam shell. I've got dual cam stuff. Same thing goes for, you know, whatever the best motor and tranny available for your make and model that was available in your make and model, right? A CRX, that ever come with a K series? No. Never come with an H series? No. I don't know. I legitimately don't know. Did they ever come with a B series? Right? So like if I want to run a CRX in the stock class, cool. Do I have to have a D15, a D16 kind of deal? Right? Like whatever the best combination available is, but that's it. You know, I believe that it should be on a tall, hard tire. I believe a 300 plus tread wear. I believe a 70 series sidewall, and make them narrow. A 185, a 195, a 205, you know, maybe make an exception that if somebody's running a V6 car, they could have a 215 or a 220, right? But tall, skinny, hard tires, right? I personally do not believe in camber limits for stock class. Mine would be excessive. Like I would say you're not allowed more than like 8 degrees total. But that's, like that's where I would go with that, right? Suspension, stock style spring, stock replacement struts. No cutting, no welding. Obviously, if you need some camber, that's one thing. Like on the Neons that have the 2 holes, you could slot them, but I can't cut and weld control arms, right? I can't, strut towers need to stay stock. I don't believe you should be allowed to slot strut towers, things like that. All of these things are designed to keep it stock. If you want to take a car, if I want to take a CRX and I want to put a bunch of adjustable suspension underneath it, and I want to swap a K series in it, and I want to put a lightweight clutch in it, Outlaw you go. The issue with that is that we have multiple local tracks who went to a breakout rule, and they went to a breakout rule because they either didn't want to tech or they couldn't tech. They had no idea what a K series looks like, let alone what it came in, right? They don't know what adjustable suspensions on what, right? They just don't want to do the work. And so they say, we have a breakout rule. Can't go any faster than this, and then do what you want, right? Or in the case of last year, one of our local tracks, it had a stock style rules, and they switched it to Outlaw and DOT. And the DOT class had the literal same exact rules as the Outlaw class, except you had to run a DOT tire. And the issue with that, yes, that track's also taken on their 2024 rules. The issue with that was that there was and some of us said it when they announced the rules. What is to stop an Outlaw car from showing up and bolting DOTs on and winning? And there was an Outlaw guy who bolted on DOTs in the preseason practice and went, to the best of my knowledge, went a second faster than anybody else did on DOTs all year, right? They ran Outlaw all season, so like they never did that. But there was nothing in the rules that would have stopped him from doing that. There was nothing in the rules that stopped anybody from just bolting street tires on and running it. Like, it just, it was annoying. Like, absolutely annoying. Yeah, they don't even care about 200 treadwear tires. Yeah, and that was the fun one at the end of the year, was watching somebody who the year before was supposed to be DOTs, and they bolted on a set of Falcon Azenias, which were blatantly illegal, complaining this year because somebody else had legal tires but an illegal body, and it's like, right? Yeah, it's the whole thing with having a big, tall, hard, narrow tire. You can have a ton of horsepower because you're also not allowed to have a lock transmission, factory or not. No limited slips, no nothing like that, right? You can only put so much horsepower through a 195 70 14. You can only put so much through. And the guys who can make the setup better are going to go faster, right? But if you don't have coilovers and, things like that, it gets really hard to have a setup that won't annihilate one of those tires with a ton of horsepower, right? So Dave Smoot's asking. Dave says, what about the 2/3 sheet metal rule, like how they made me do my car for Bristol? Replacing door and quarter skins can get expensive. Just trying to keep it gorilla. I get it, Dave. To me, that goes to which style of rules. Outlaw style of rules. I'll be dead honest with you guys. I honestly The old VCTS body rules with a slight tweak is what I would love for the outlaw style rules to be. I would love to see stock doors, stock quarters, stock roofs, fenders, hoods, front and rear bumper allowed, right? I like that rule. I really like that rule in VCTS because it didn't let the bodies get really goofy looking. Because look, I've seen what some of you guys do. Some of you dirt guys that are just slapping tin on these cars. Like, I'm not pulling up any examples, but I've seen some lately where it's like, the fuck is that? Right? It stops that from happening. And, you know, well, it gets expensive to put doors and quarters on. I love you, Dave, but it's a Cobalt. Shouldn't be too expensive, right? And you can do real good with banging them out. Now, I go back to, if you have the stock doors and the stock quarters and you put aluminum over them, so you skin it to make it look nice, I like the way that looks. I think it's a good compromise. It keeps the weights in the car, right? Things like that. But it allows you to have, now I say that, but if your stock body goes like this, your sheet metal body should not go like that, right? Right? As Brian says, it keeps the cars relatable, 100%. And also, in my opinion, VCTS did a really good job at stopping scope creep. Okay. I raced against mini stocks who locally, if you watch them build these cars, they are floor pans and everything else is massaged from there up. They're cutting the front strut towers off and repositioning them in the factory location, and the rear torque boxes are getting, strengthened. And if you look at it, you're like, even that line, it just doesn't, right? You'd watch them cut everything out of the car by keeping stock doors, stock quarters, stock roofs, right? You are stopping that scope creep by a lot. And it worked for a while. Oh my God, John, I got to text you. I am so sorry, my guy. It's been a crazy few days, but I promise you, I will text you tonight. I promise you. Okay. If not, you can publicly shame me the next time I go live. It stops that scope creep. Okay. I'm watching. We have somebody locally to us here in Michigan, runs dirt, who has an all tube chassis Cavalier. And their argument is, well, all the mounting points are in the same locations. And it's cheaper. It's cheaper than buying a rust-free car. But then they say they'll sell them for like $3,500. And the front suspension, the drivetrain, and the rear suspension are Cavalier. Nothing else on that car is. I'm not saying that they're wrong, that everything's in the stock location. I haven't looked at them. I haven't tested them. I'm not saying that they're not. But I can tell you that if I took one of these cars and made a jig and just put everything where I wanted it to anyway, and just use neon stuff, should be fast, real fast, right? But if I was to go out there and win, which they were not dominant, I don't know if they won, but they were not dominant. But if I went out and I was dominant in a car like that, it obsoletes anybody else that wants to go fast. It really does. Because now you have to spend that money to get somebody to build you a chassis, or you have to know how to do that, or just you have to have one, right? I don't think that should be allowed. I really don't. We have guys begging for mini stock shows around us up here. And when they're given a mini stock show, they get like 8 to 10 guys, maybe 12 to 15 at most. And it's because there's not any mini stocks anymore. They went from a stock class to just purpose-built firewalls and floor pans that were turned into race cars. And, you know, Drew says, we made sheet metal doors on our mini stocks. They look stock. I'm going to hang it up in here eventually. I used to run sheet metal doors. As Spartan, you could do that. You didn't have to run the stock door. I ran stock fender to stock quarter panel, and I just connected the two with tin, folded it along, riveted it up. It looked really nice. It still looked like a Dodge Neon. I could be convinced of that, but it would be one where you have to run stock fenders or stock doors, right? So that you can follow stock body lines. Because then it's like, well, if we replace the fenders and we replace the doors, well, why should we keep the stock quarters? You know, scope creep, right? And some people can do that. Some people can make really nice stuff. Like the Davises always have really nice stuff. Like all you guys have really nice looking cars, right? I have no doubt you guys could make all aluminum stuff and make a front wheel drive look like it should. But I've also seen some guys make stuff that it's just, holy shit, what the fuck is that, right? I've seen some stuff, right? Now there's some tracks, there's some series that can't put the cat back in the bag. Is the problem. You know, they've allowed it to get to where guys have full-blown late model looking cars. And I don't blame the racer, right? I don't blame the racer. Like, I'll be honest, I was building the new car and I said all along it would not be VCTS legal because I had no intentions of putting stock body panels on it. It's getting the quarter panels cut off. Like, that car is going to have an all aluminum body. The goal of that car is to be as light as possible. I want to have to add lead to that car. I don't have to add lead to my other cars because I weigh too much, right? That was the plan. And I said it all along. I'm not going to run VCTS with that car because VCTS doesn't allow aluminum bodies. So I want to have the old car, which still has the stock doors, stock quarters, going to have stock fenders on it, you know, front bumper, all that. Like, that's cool. I'll run that car in VCTS. And I've got the new car for everything else because all aluminum stuff like that's legal. VCTS switched and allowed aluminum bodies. Okay, well, the only thing that was going to stop me from running the new car with VCTS is that. So now I can put all my effort in the new car because I can run it practically anywhere, right? But somebody with an all-out, you know, all late model body, even if it's hand fabricated, right? Say they've got front bumper, fenders, and rear bumper, and everything in between is fabricated, and they still have a stock roof, right? All of that kind of time, right? The issue is that they've got everything already cut off. And if you tell them they have to put factory panels back on, factory doors and stuff, all hell's going to break loose. You're going to piss that guy off. And the other guy who doesn't have stock doors and stock fenders, maybe he's got stock quarters, same deal. Like, you can't put that cat back in the bag, right? That's why I lobbied hard for people not to let that happen. But dude, Dave, 6 foot plexi? I think mine was 9. So you're talking to a guy who went undefeated for like 6 years with a plexiglass sideboard. So trust me, I have ideas on some sideboard cards, right? And look, I also believe if a track is going to go that far as to say, hey, do what you want with the bodies. We had 2 or 3 guys at Super Shoe show up with basically outlaw late model bodies. Wedge nosed fronts, tin, right? If you're going to do it, do it. Now, I also, again, I do not believe it should be allowed. End of the year special shows. That's why I'm building this car, so I can cut the roof off, so I can do some stuff like that, right? However, I don't believe it should be allowed weekly. I don't, if Traveling Series wanted to do it, awesome, but I don't believe they should ever try to lobby for that Traveling Series to allow, to be the rule set at a local track, right? Yeah. Jordan's all wound up about this one. Brother, you'd be surprised what you could do with 93 octane. So, and this goes to it. This goes to it, right? Some of our dirt tracks, they agreed on a set of rules. They allowed bigger motors, open motors, stuff like that. And then they come out this year and said 93 octane only, no race gas, no E85, and you have to run an OEM radiator and a single fan. I can understand a 93 octane rule, right? I can understand that because you would be surprised what you could do with 93 octane, even with high compression. If you're 15, 16 to 1 compression, I would ask what you're doing racing some of those racetracks, right? But OEM radiator and single fan, I'll be honest, is fucking stupid. You can cool. You can cool a car on an OEM radiator. Like my Neons, honestly, even that last one I built, there was 220 wheel horse. It honestly probably would have cooled with a single like a stock radiator, but it wasn't but a couple dollars more to run a Mishimoto knockoff, and it wasn't but a couple dollars more to run the Ford radiators we were running, right? And then it just guarantees that it doesn't get hot. And, you know, I watched plenty of guys overheat with bone stock motors. Plenty of guys. A couple of our local racetrack, Spartan, Speedway, Corgan Oil, back in the day, I distinctly remember 3 separate times it got so hot, they came around and said, you can take the hood off if you guys want to help you keep cool. And bam, there went all the hoods. And they, okay, we'll give you like a 20-pound allowance on weight. Because there were some guys that were like right there, blew the hoods off. So, yeah. But the radiator fan rule too, stuck neon fan is like fuck this thick, right? And it covers half the radiator. Now, if you got the AC, then you got 2 of them, right? Okay. But if you didn't know you got the one fan that covers half the radiator, okay? I could put 2 very cheap aftermarket fans on, stack them, and I can cover the full width of that radiator and still leave an opening, because at speed, your fan can actually be a restriction, right? But like, I could do that for probably the price of a new fan, like if I don't go get one out of a junkyard, right? But it's like, yeah, I don't get, I can understand the 93 rule. Like if they're trying to rein, and listen, I seen your argument, Jordan. That does not favor one manufacturer over another. Okay. 15 to 1 compression is the same in each motor, right? Dynamic compression forces are the same. Like that's not a make and model thing. Okay. If there's an Ecotech guy who's making 15.5 to 1 compression with 45 degrees of timing, like if he's making that live with 93, I'd like to talk to him. Okay. Like that's not a make and model thing. Now, is that a giant motor compared to stock motor thing? Yeah. Right. But you know, the other part of that, like I understand where they could be coming from, that they want to limit horsepower. Okay. I can understand that. Do I agree that they should have allowed you guys to go wide open and pull it back some? No, not necessarily. After reading through a bunch of stuff, I do believe it might be one guy just trying to exert a little power over the class, over some tracks. I can see that. But I will straight up admit that the single, like the OEM radiator single fan is dumb. It's dumb. you know, that's going to bite them in the ass when stock motor guys are blowing up from overheating. I'll agree with that one all day long. That's an asinine addition to the rules. If you want to limit horsepower, 93 octane, you know. And as John said, like, how are they going to check for octane? Because you could get some 100 octane stuff that, you know, realistically, E85 is only like 102 octane because octane isn't everything, right? So, and you can take your 15-to-1 and put that bad boy on 93 or maybe some 100 turbo blue. Just take it to the dyno and just have them go lazy on the tune and ramp up to it. You know, you might be down on some power, but it is what it is. You know, you could also look at doing like some head gasket shims or something like that. You know, like but that goes to the reason I can understand that, especially, okay, I'll name them, especially Crystal. Crystal for a long time was trophies only. Like, they had a clan rule on the entire car. So them wanting to go back to the days of what Crystal used to be, I understand that. The other tracks, I haven't paid attention long enough to know what they used to be and what they are now. I'm not going to lie. I'm not that up on the dirt scene, right? But if Crystal's trying to rein things in like that, you know, I knew guys who went up to Crystal with close to 250, 280 wheel horsepower and then got mad that they got claimed. I'm not selling my car for that. That's absolutely. They know who won. They know who won. They know our name. Bro. Like, no. You know. So I can understand if Crystal wants to go back to that. It doesn't want big motors, you know. I can understand trying to, you know, as you said, T-Bird used to have stock class and cyber class. I can understand if that's what. No, I think I had a glitch in the Wi-Fi. My dad said that it's skipping and freezing occasionally. I think I had a glitch in the Wi-Fi because I had my little Wi-Fi signal pop up on my screen. That goes to, I can understand if they're trying to get the cybers back, right? Whichever one's slower. I don't know. Cyber stock. You guys, Warrior, cybers, all whatever. Okay. Like, I can understand if they want to do that. However, say that's what you're doing. Split into two classes. Tech them, right? If you have outlaw classes and you say you're going to allow an outlaw class, you can't be upset when you have outlaws show up, right? But I do think you guys are getting a little bit of a raw deal. You know, I do. And it's their playground. This is what I see a lot. I see this a lot. One of our local tracks, I honestly, truly believe they're trying to kill the front-wheel drive class. Because I figure if they fuck with them long enough, people will just stop coming and then go, see, nobody's here, and then cancel it, right? I truly believe that's what happens sometimes, is that promoters, tech guys, whoever, want to say, hey, we gave you guys a place to race and nobody showed up. So see, it's not us. And it's like, but yeah, you fucked with everything. Like, you made it where nobody wanted to race. Like, Trent, you go right ahead. I can tell you that if I have an internet issue, it's probably into my router in the house because we're hardwired all the way out. That's what this little dude is a hardwire. And then I got a really nice fast router hanging up right over here. So, yeah. But I take your advice. I'm not an IT guy. I'm surprised I got this to work, right? The reason why I say that too is I watched this happen last year with a couple tracks. I've watched it happen this year. The tentative rules that came out had 52% left side weight. No bump stops whatsoever. a base weight of 2350, which I don't care. I agree with that. That's fine by me. Instead of 2250 with 23 and 24, they just said 2350 for everybody. Okay, I can be on board with that one. But the 52% left side, right? I have Doc sitting outside, and here, hopefully this week, I'm going to bring him right in here, and I'm going to put him on the scales because that car has no lead in it. It has a 4-gallon cell centered in the trunk. Yeah, 1/4 inch of rear steer, but has, minimal cage in it. And then I'm going to sit my fat ass in it, and I want to see what the left side is because I'm going to guess it's at least 54, right? But yeah, like 1/4 inch of rear steer. That's all they said. Okay. Well, then they come out, well, we're going to measure it with, you can only have a 1/4 inch from your difference in your front and your rear. So we're going to put a long string on it or level on it, and you can only be a 1/4 inch from there. Who the fuck's going to measure that at home, right? When I read that, because they went to an ABC format, right? When I read those kind of rules, what it tells me is that whoever wrote them or whatever track adopted them, right? Who did you have advising you on these rules? Because it wasn't a front wheel drive guy. If it wasn't anybody that knew what the hell they were talking about. Like, but that goes to, if you're trying to chase off cars, why not piss off all your fast guys? Right? Drew, and because Drew, you have a Saturn, right? Drew says no lead in my car, 8-gallon cell centered with me in the car. It's at 55.2 left side. Yeah, Lucy, no lead in the car, fuel cell not centered, fuel cell on the left side, 8 gallons. It was on the left half. Solid door plate. I was damn near 56, mind you. I weighed 270, 280. I was damn near 56. I put 4 3s on instead of 4s on the left side and got to 54.8, right? And that's another thing. Like that's the other part of it, right? If I'm running 3s and 4s for offset, that's a whole point and a half of left side. Okay, well now I have to run 3s, and now I have to shove the left sides out farther to try to make this, or maybe even more. Maybe I got to run, 2s on the left side to try to get this weight, right? Or whatever, right? So I've just, well, yeah, it'd be 2s. It'd stick out even farther. So now they're unsafe, right? Stuff like that. And it's just like, the limited late guys and gals were upset that they went from 2650 to 2700 and they had a 60% left side roll. And I watched multiple of those people be upset that they did that to them. How could they do that to us? We went from no left side rule to 52. VCTS is at 55. And theirs is 55. So you can be 55.99, right? I think NCTS went to a left side, but it was like 56. It was more than VCTS or the same as VCTS. So it didn't affect me. I didn't pay that much attention to it. Berlin locally has a 54% left side rule. That's it. That's the only places with a left side rule. Like, right? Nick says, they would only take the fast cars left side or rear steer. They don't have time to reset scales for all the different wheelbase front wheel drive cars. It isn't even that. It's, are they going to get that big, long stick out? Because I tell you right now, they tech my car and I watch them not tech a bunch of others. I'm going to go over there and be like, man, that car looks like it has an awful lot of rear steer. Man, you can see that thing going around the track. It looks like it's turned real left. You better check the rear steer on that car. You better check the rear steer on that car. You better check the rear steer on that car. Man, that car is leaning real heavy on the left side. I'll bet it's higher. I'll bet it's higher. I'll bet it's higher. Right? But I've seen it. I've seen it all over. I've seen it all over the place. That's what they do. So there's a couple comments that I wanted to get on here. Patrick says, Our track said absolutely no late model bodies. They said that they have a late model class and we're welcome to run it. But no means they said, will their 4-cylinder class look like their late model class? Stock bodies only. Doors can be made, but must look stock. We average 31 cars a night. I personally hate stock body rules. And see, that's the thing though, Patrick. You average 31 cars a night, right? How many guys or gals in that class, if you were suddenly allowed to blow all the steel off the car and build a wider aluminum body with all aftermarket stuff, or even run the plastic bodies, how many people would do that overnight? And how many people would go, well, since I can't run a late model body, what's the point? Right? As Drew said, because he commented on this one, and I wanted to comment, I wanted to read this one too. Where to go? Right here. We pleaded hard at South Bend to not go crazy. Radials had great car counts. Someone wanted Hoosiers and a few other things. They switched and killed the car counts. My opinion, made most guys go back to Hornets. Yep. And I don't know if you remember, Drew, I was actually on your guys' side that South Bend should not run Hoosiers. I was on your side on that one. I like the outlaw rules. I like the Hoosiers being the top tire, the spec tire. I like all that kind of stuff. But I also am in favor of not biting the hand that feeds you. And South Bend was getting 65, 70 cars a night, and they were all South Bend cars. You know, Galesburg will pull 65 to 80 front wheel drives, and they're Galesburg cars. Good or bad, they're Galesburg cars. The top, you know, like some people might travel, 8, 10 guys might go to Kazoo and then sprint Galesburg or vice versa or whatever. But for the most part, if those guys aren't racing Galesburg, they're just not going to race. They're not going anywhere else. They don't travel anywhere else, right? I would not advocate for Galesburg to run a different rule set than what they're running. I would not advocate for South Bend to run a different rule set than they're running. You know, Patrick, with 31 cars, I wouldn't advocate for any big rule changes, right? I wouldn't advocate for that, because you have something that's working, and whether people like it or not, you know, it makes sense. It really does. It makes sense not to change it because you have a bunch of people who they're already running it, you know. So yeah. They thought it would help guys. Took us 3 weeks to figure it out. We won more than we did on Hoosiers. Yeah. But the radials, what really helped on the radials was that lighter weight guys with less horsepower could go just as fast with guys with big horsepower that weighed a little more. And the big horsepower stuff, you'd bake the tires off. Like, again, that's why I think stock should be on. They should be on a hard, narrow, tall tire. 100%. You know, and I like Hoosiers. Well, I used to. Like, I advocate for Hoosier 790s, but that's in an ABC or an outlaw style setting. So, yeah. And George says, you want my opinion? Sure. I want all your opinions. Well, that relate to this subject, because there's one of you commenting that I know that'll give me an opinion that I probably don't want to repeat. But he says, I think all these tracks should sanction themselves to asphalt, to NCTS, and dirt to Midwest Dirt. I agree and I don't. I won't comment on the dirt side just because, again, I'm not that up on the dirt side of stuff, especially around here. Okay. The pavement side of stuff, I wouldn't mind the outlaw style being in accordance with NCTS, or maybe a couple little variances. If you want to have a little bit different weight rule, maybe don't penalize the K series, or maybe have a different base weight. I could see that. But if you want to run a stock style class and an outlaw class, you know, NCTS wouldn't do anything for your stock class, right? So I can agree and not necessarily disagree, right? Yeah. As John says, you do that about an hour, they change your mind and rules. Yeah, John did that to an enduro car. The rules were no verticals, and John had it was just this piece of tin in an A with a flamingo on top, and it was about yay long, right in the center of the roof. And they told him he was going to have to take it down because no verticals. And so John stood there and he's like, "That looks like it's above the roof. That looks like it's above the roof. You better check that. Looks like it's above the roof. You better check that. It looks like it's above the roof." And they're like, "Your flamingo's fine." And he said, "I thought so." So yeah. And Drew says, we ran the Fusions, a 195 70 14, and they were a 480 treadwear, best tire we ran. And we switched to the Federals because Fusions went away, same size of 400 treadwear. The Fusions, the DOTs can become a game of which ones are sticky for the size and the treadwear, but there are no sticky 300 plus, 70 plus sidewall tires. They don't exist. There's some that are better than others, but there are none that will hold a candle to a 200 treadwear Falcon or Dereza or a Hoosier 790. There's none that will hold a candle to them, right? And by only allowing like a 195, you can have 290 horsepower. You are going to light that left front up the entire way down the straightaway. You know, because again, I'm a firm believer in that class, the stock style, no limited slips, no spools, no welded trannies. That bad boy better spin, right? So, but we used to. So the last ones that we did, the last time I had to run DOTs, because once I stopped running stock stuff, I stopped running DOTs. I take that back. I ran one DOT race at Springport for giggles one year, I think 2014. We just had some tires on the way laying around, but we ran the Sumitomo HTR 200 in a 195 70 14, and I want to say they were like a 380 treadwear, but the pattern on them lent itself really well to stock car racing, and they were they had a 60 psi sidewall or 55 psi sidewall rating, so they were rated for more weight and a little higher psi, right? And they got rid of and we really liked them. They discontinued them. We found that out. We called Tire Rack and ordered the last 20 of them that they had. So our last year, we did pretty well because we still had the good tires and everybody else was trying to figure out what they were doing. Most other people's lap times didn't drop much. And then at the end of that year, we still had like 8 or 10 of them and we sold them. So we did okay. But yeah, I stopped running them in after 2011. 2011 was the last year I've been running DOTs for any length of time at all. So that's why when people ask me for a good DOT, I'm like, nah. So, but Jordan says, when they got rid of Warriors, stock, and Cybers, outlaw, at T-Bird, I was shaking my head if they needed more Cybers. Then Warriors were faster, me included, than some Cybers with its time to move up. All right, you confused me the second half of that. Yeah, you're outlaw, you're stock. You are likely going to have some outlaws who are slow enough to be in the stock class, and you're going to have some fast stock guys who should be at the tail end of the fast guys. I heard it a few times on one of our local tracks. Well, I couldn't possibly move up. I couldn't possibly move up. I couldn't compete. I couldn't compete. They got built motors. They got lightweight clutches. Like, cars doesn't weigh much. They broke out and they had to move up. And then they're top 5, top 6 in the Outlaws with supposedly just bolting tires on. And it's like, huh. Okay. Like, yeah, right? I just truly wish that tracks, and I am okay if a traveling series is on an island. I really am. I'm okay if the NCTS and VCTS is a little bit more extreme than my local tracks. I'm okay with that. I would like them to be the same because then I don't have to change anything to race either or. But if I want to go traveling, if I want to go, hey Delaney, if I want to go run North Wilkesboro, or I want to go run Bristol, or I want to go run New Smyrna, or I want to go run these fast tracks that once in a lifetime opportunity kind of things, I'm okay with those rules being a little extra. Okay. But I wish all my local tracks, like there's tracks I can't race in Michigan with the car that I had. You know, if I had my car running last year, built to what it had been, right? If I built a car that was VCTS legal for last year, I would have been able to run the NCTS. I would have been able to run Kalamazoo, Springport, Owasso, Spartan, Galesburg. That might have been it as far as like local tracks, right? I could go run Angola, but they're on an American racer, okay? But Kalamazoo, M40, could have went and ran M40. But Kalamazoo had a little different rules than Springport, who had a little different rules than Owasso, who had a little different rules than Spartan, but they were all supposed to be based off each other, right? I was really hopeful when this alliance thing got announced, because it's like, hey, I am okay, because it was like 5 or 6 big tracks. Oh, Kyle, you got to let me know what XR did. It's 5 or 6 tracks, all local, ones that I run. I was happy. This is cool. Like all these guys on the same page, right? I can understand Berlin has had their same basic rule set that's been slightly off from the state of Michigan for a long, long time. Okay. I understand Berlin not wanting in on this. I do, but I don't, because they're leaving cars on the table because nobody can come in and run with them. And their guys are locked in because they can't go and be competitive elsewhere without changes, right? Like, I would love that. But then the rules come out. It's like, what's this stupid shit? Why is there 52% left? Who does that benefit? Nobody. Nobody at all. Like, ooh. I'm curious who, right? Mike John says, my first race was in 1996. The rules have never matched from track to track. They used to have enough cars, it didn't matter, and people didn't travel much. Yeah. Yeah. You go back far enough, and there was 2 classes. There was either V8s and V6s, or there were, like outlaws and stocks, that was back in the day, right? Like, I personally believe front-wheel drive racing could be super strong anywhere in this great nation. It is still the most affordable way to go racing. I had a guy in a mini sprint one time be like, you can't get in racing more affordably. He's like, I bought this whole car with spares for 10 grand. And I was like, brother, I'd sell you my car for 35, and it's a feature winning some bitch. Like 10 grand, right? You can easily, if you have all your safety gear, okay, which you need to go racing at all, like you can get in a front wheel drive and go racing for $1,500, $2 grand, $2,500 if you want to run stock style stuff, right? You can do it. You can run junkyard parts. You can run whatever you want. You can start adding motor to it. You can start doing that. You can go fast. You can go touring. I have every single intention of taking that new car, and I'm going to race it here in Michigan, which gives me the top of the nation. I want to take that bad boy, and whether it's New Smyrna with VCTS or if the Freedom Factory stuff happens again, I'm going to tow that race car down to Florida. I want to tow that sumbitch all the way out to California to run an Olga's Dream, and then I want to tow it over to Maine or somewhere on an East Coast state, and I want to say I took that race car, that Dodge Neon, and I raced top to bottom, left to right of this great nation. And I know I can do it. I know I can do it. Because Olga's Dreams rules, it's legal. New Smyrna VCTS, it'll be legal. I'll race it all over here in Michigan, I'm sure I can find somewhere out east to run it. whether I got to run it in a touring series race or something, but I can run it coast to coast, top to bottom, right? There is no reason that we can't have 20, 30, 40, 50 cars at every racetrack. But if you run a racetrack, I'm begging you, listen to somebody that knows these cars to do some common sense shit. It's not that hard. If you don't want to tech them, run ABC. If you have somebody who's willing to tech them, run 2 classes. I don't believe that somebody starting out 5 flags. Anyways, I can race in Florida. I don't believe somebody starting out with, a $1,500 car. I don't believe they should necessarily have to run against guys that are buying Wyndham motors and, they're buying cars for 10 grand. They're buying a Wyndham motor for, depends on who you ask. And they've easily got 10, 15, 20, $25,000 in a car. I don't believe they should necessarily have to race against them. However, if you've got ABC, they're not going to. They're going to run the C main, so they don't have to. A stock class can teach them a lot, and then they can have aspirations moving up. I fully believe you can have 20, 30, 40, 50 cars easy. But it boils down to, A, treat your racers with a tiny bit of respect. That's it. Act like you want them at your racetrack. Okay? Have a rule set that makes sense. That makes sense to a front-wheel drive guy. Stop listening to late model guys or street stock guys or guys who have never raced these things. They are not hard to write a rule set for. They're not hard. Okay? But tech whatever rule set you have. Big race, end of the year, a couple years ago. There was one rule. DOT's 300 tread wear or higher. Your top 2 cars had Falcon Azenias on it. And that is not a tire that is hidden. I can tell you a car has Falcon Azenias on it from 150 feet away, probably 150 feet. My eyesight may not be that great. It's a very distinct tread wear pattern. Everybody on the property knew that car that won and second place had Falcon Azenias on it. Okay? That was the one rule that they had. And they went, meh. Boot them. Hey, what are these tires? Hey, what's the tread wear on these tires? Okay, cool. You broke the one rule. Like, cool. That's basically it. If you do those few things, you can have an amazing car count. You can have an amazing front-wheel drive car count. If you used to have 40 cars a night, talk to those 40 drivers. Ask them why they're either not racing for you or not racing at all. And most of them are going to tell you that you fucked up the rules or you treated them like shit. We had a racetrack a couple years ago. The promoter didn't like front-wheel drives, and it wasn't a secret. And every time somebody was like, hey, could we maybe be treated with respect? They were like, well, see, this is why you don't get treated with respect. Look at you talking shit. They ran last every single night. Oh, hey, so we let these guys oil the racetrack down, but now it's like 1 a.m. and our curfew's coming up, so we're going to cut the B main and the C main and the D main. You guys are cool with that, right? Are we going to make it up next week? Nah, nobody wants to see that. Like, they're hitting a racetrack at fucking midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but yet the late models could take 3.5 hours, even though there was a timed out rule, right? This last year, that same racetrack watched their front-wheel drive car count grow, and the rules basically didn't change, but that promoter was gone. Suddenly, sometimes they would race first or second or third or fourth or fifth. They'd get mixed around. And the car count grew. Crazy, right? And they paid them less. That first year, they were paying $600 to win the B main. And 2 or 3 other local tracks were having higher car counts than them, and it was 2/3 to win at those tracks than it was to win the B main at this other track, right? Listening to the drivers, not shitting all over them, will do wonders for your car count. It's this time of year, people are wanting to build race cars. I got 2 of them sitting right there. I got 1 more sitting outside. We're getting, as soon as I get some plastic up in here, because I'll tell you what, my toes are frozen right now. I get a little bit where I can retain some heat in here. And like, I'm going to film my stuff, but I'm planning on working on these cars. I'd like to know the rules, you know? Like, Steve says, what's this talk of an alliance? So basically, up here in Michigan, 5 or 6 racetracks supposedly all got together and said, here's our rule book. All of these tracks are going to have these rules, and they're all going to enforce them. And then 3 of those racetracks all publicly came out and said, we didn't agree to this. So not a good look. So we were all hopeful because they were some of the big hitters here in Michigan. So yeah. And Drew says, we bring 8 cars and full crew and family. Who is bringing in the money for you? They don't care. And I loved when John remembers these days. I never seen this, but I really like this idea too. I loved when a track put features in order by the lowest amount of yellow flag time the previous week. We would, oh goodness. Who are you? Did I miss a comment here that you're replying to, Dad? I think Dad's going back up or something here. That or I missed a comment. But I like that idea. The amount of times I have been involved in green, white, checkered features is a lot higher than you might imagine. I've also been in some fucking wreck fests, right? Well, Dad, I can't see which, like, it doesn't make that comment doesn't make sense with how you commented to him. That's just why I was curious. So it must not have popped up for me. So no, Steve. So one racetrack posted a press release and said the straight up press release was this sheet that had these tracks over here, and it had all the racetracks. Said, we are all in agreement. We are all in part of this alliance. Here's our rule set. Looking forward to going to the new year. And some of the racetracks on that said, we were talking, but we did not agree to these rules. So I think it's one where they were trying to make an alliance to be able to do that. And nobody really knows why that was announced. So, yeah. When did you do that, Drew? I'm just curious because I've been to racetracks where it is very obvious that the promoters, the race director, yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't see that comment. That didn't pop up. I'd have mentioned that. So, Woody, I could tell you 2 or 3 racetracks. Like I could tell you one promoter that would surprise a lot of people. Maybe the promoter flat out said, "I don't like having the front wheel drive cars. I don't like having the front drive cars, but you guys, there's too many of you. I can't not have you. I've been told that more than once, right? That was before the show. Some of those promoters don't talk to me as much anymore. And look, I know that my strong opinions, at this point, I doubt that many promoters are watching. Maybe Rick. I haven't seen Rick in a while. I haven't seen Rick Young in a while. But I can think somebody is a nice guy or gal. I can want to race at their racetrack. I can go race for them and believe that they are not making the right decision. Oh, yeah, Drew, 100%. I fully agree with you. I don't know if it's the promoter or the owner as much, but I agree with you. I can believe that. Look, Kelly Carlton is on here every now and then. I have told Kelly to his face, I have told Kelly over the internet that I didn't agree with all of his rules. Kelly, for a while in the SCDRA, did not mandate gloves. And I stand firm in that I think that's dumb. I think that's dumb for any promoter, any track, any series to not mandate gloves. I do not fucking understand it. Mandate fire suits, mandate fire shoes, all this kind of stuff, and then let the skin burn off your hands, right? I can respect what Kelly does with the SCDRA. I can respect where Kelly gets people, the racetracks he goes to. I can respect all that. SCDRA pays $20,000 to win for the Winter Freeze, right? I can respect the hell out of that. But I can also think the one decision of not mandating gloves is not a smart one. Kelly could think that it's a really stupid decision for me to criticize racetracks or series or whatever. And he's probably right. But I have had promoters who have stopped talking to me as much, who are not as friendly with me when I see them. And I've in person, nothing's changed. There we go. Rick, I love you, buddy. I've mentioned you a couple times. I know you're always here. Rick Young, promoter of Shady Bull Speedway, right? And Rick says, we love our compacts. They put on some great racing. The premier class by all accounts. I'd be eating lunch meat a lot without them. Right there is a track promoter telling you that front drive class is good for his racetrack. And Rick, was it last year or the year? Rick was paying $500 to win weekly for a stock compact class. Now, one thing that I respect Rick for is Rick, they had an outlaw style class and they got a few cars. They had low car counts. And Rick basically said, I don't want to pay that much money for those few cars. We're not going to have outlaw style cars. I can respect the shit out of that. And he has a lot of cars. They have really good racing. Like, I respect the hell out of that. I can respect somebody saying, hey, if we could get 15 to 20 outlaw cars, we'd run them, but we're getting 6 to 8. And, they want more money to run, rightfully so. A late model should make more money than a street stock. An outlaw should make a little more money than a stock class. But if it only brings 5 to 7 cars, paying them more to win doesn't make a lot of sense. So I can respect the shit out of somebody saying that. But that's just coming right out and saying it versus, well, we're going to choke these rules down and then, see, you guys are always complaining. We give you a place to race and here you are bitching about it. Just always drama with you guys. Yeah, I wonder why. Perhaps it has something to do with you making a really stupid rule set. Might be that, that's the kind of stuff that I can't stand. And I'll tell that to somebody to their face. If some of these promoters want to talk to me about this, message me. I'll give you my phone number. Hit me up. We'll go have dinner. I'll talk to you about this. I am not an unreasonable person when it comes to, hey, we're going to run the front wheel drives last this week because we're having this big show for this class and we want to showcase it. Okay. Why are they always running last? How come week in and week out that class is last? If it's not a big deal, run your late models last every week. I bet you it's a big deal then, right? Well, time limit, so we switch the schedule around, and now the front wheel drives, the B and the C main are going to run last. Oh, hit our curfew. Those guys don't get to race. Why are we hitting curfew and you still have 2 features to go? Who didn't get timed out like they should have? Was it the front wheel drive guys? Probably not. Dude, the Ohio Valley SCDRA series had a track call. I don't normally name names, but we already read it out. Had a track call us out as being dumb and idiots because we don't require neck support or a head and neck, so they won't schedule with the series this year. Yeah, I can tell you, I would lose cars over it if I ran a racetrack or I ran a race series. Containment seats, head and necks, gloves, shoes, window nets, mandatory. SFI rated. Sorry. I don't need your death on my conscience. And I will have enough fire extinguishers, fire suppression system, and track support there if I'm a racetrack to make sure that if something happens to you while you're racing and you need time, like me, you're a big dude, takes you an extra 10 seconds to climb out of the car, I'll make sure we can get to you soon enough that you have time to get out, right? But those things are mandatory. And I would lose cars over it, and that's fine. My end of the year shows, all those things are mandatory. My beginning of the year shows, middle of the show years, low money, high money, those things are mandatory. And if there's one thing I think an alliance of racers should get together on, it's that. Like an alliance of tracks, it's that. And I was that guy. The only reason that I put a containment seat in and the only reason I bought a head and neck is because it was mandated to go to Bristol. And I said, I'm going to go race Bristol. And I have seen the error of my ways. And now I don't even want to climb in a regular seat. Don't want to. So Kyle's basically, or Travis is basically agreeing with me here. That's a long thing. I don't think it's a lot to ask for common sense rules. If you want to slow your front wheel drive cars down, say that. Say they're a little too fast. Say, like, we need to slow you guys down. What can we do? Hey, you know what? This is how we're going to slow you down. We're going to slow you down with tires, right? Or, just whatever the excuse is, just come out and say it. But if you're like, hey, I know every other racetrack's this way, and I know that we've been this way for years, but fuck it. We're going to switch that up this year. Or you just start doing goofy stuff that somebody without a front wheel drive came up with. Like, it amazes me in this day and age how far off rules can be on front wheel drives when tracks are trying not to tech them. I can understand not listening to the top 3 guys in your class that are begging you to allow them to go faster somehow. Stickier tires or lighter weight or, full on downforce body or something like that. I can understand not listening to them. But if you want to change a weight rule, Find out what the cars in your class weigh. Ask around. Anybody who has a set of scales at home can tell you what their left side weight is. They can tell you what their overall weight is. Or if you're like, you know what, next year we might want to change the weight rules. Pay attention throughout the year. Write down how much cars weigh. Write down the left side rules and stuff like that. Like the Alliance rules that got posted, 52% left is asinine. If I take a bone stock car and I add a roll cage in it with the amount of door bars that I should, and I add the door plates like I always do, that car, 1/8-inch steel from opening to opening on the door, and then I add my fat ass in it, and even if I keep a stock gas tank and stuff like that, I truly believe it'll be 53, 54, 55% left. With stock wheels, with everything except for the cage and me on the left side, right? 55, 56% is a very reasonable left side weight rule. But somebody got it in their heads, hey, if we have 52% left, it'll slow those guys down. And if you are trying to write ABC rules with something like that of 52% left, and you're like, we're gonna get the fast guys, you are gonna screw the bottom half of the field. If you want an example of it, Corrigan Oil Speedway, back when it was Spartan, all the way back in 2009, they said no more bent rear toe links, rear lateral arms, no more rear steer. Mind you, there was a few of us that were out of control. You'd watch us go down to backstretch and read the left side numbers. I understand that, right? But everybody in the field had a neon except for save maybe one car. I was the third car the tech man came up to, and the car was still on the trailer, and he's like, I got to check for the stock rear links. And I laid under there, and he's like, and I'm like, do you know what you're looking for? He's like, honestly, no. Because he wasn't the only tech guy. And I said, okay, these right here, they need to be stock, need to be straight. And I kind of chuckled and I said, you're only going to slow down the slow guys though, right? And he looked at me and I was like, us fast guys know what to do to get the steer that we need and to get the car to do what we need. But the guys in the bottom half of the field, they have no idea how to overcome this. And he went, huh. And then he went and teched everybody else. And the top 5 to 8 guys were exactly as fast as they were the week before. Bottom half of the field were on average 2.5 to 3 tenths slower because they had no idea how to overcome losing the rear steer that they put in by bending that stock link. My method of madness is I took the stock neon adjusters and I put, instead of only one on the backside, I put one on the backside and one on the front side. So I had double the amount of adjustment. And when I put the bolt through the control arms or through the knuckles on the outside, I bent the head of the bolt. And then I turned that bolt the way I wanted it to give me a little extra rear steer. So my car it didn't go down like this, but it still went down a little bit sideways. Right? But the guys in the back, all they knew was bend bar equal rear steer, unbend bar, no rear steer. Right? They didn't measure anything. So I had guys that were cutting a 16th, an 1/8, 3/16, a 1/4 inch, and they would swap those bars out to get more rear steer. I had one guy who told me after a while that he put a porta power on it, and where his links went through the body, they were angled. So he had all stock links, but the front one was like a 1/4 inch in front of the rear, right? The fast guys all figured out a way around it. So in this instance, with a 52% left side rule, I know that on this car, that if I just put a little more offset on the wheels on the left side, I'll move weight to the left. I don't have to change anything else. But a guy who doesn't have another set of wheels, who doesn't have a set of scales, well, he's going to have to put weight on the right side so that he can hit that number. Maybe I fabricate and move my fuel cell a little bit over to the right. Maybe I just move my battery, right? Work on sneaky ways to get it. He has no idea how to do all that. He's got a stock tank, doesn't know how to move it. He's trying all sorts of different springs without realizing you can't move weight from left to right using springs. You can only move it forward and back. So now he's going to cut a bunch of stuff out of the right side or the left side of the car, but not the right side. Or maybe he cuts maybe cuts the door plate off. Stuff like that, right? Rules that are designed to blanket a class without an understanding of how they work will not slow down the fast guys. Because they're fast for a reason. Maybe it's a gob of motor. Maybe it's setup. But if you apply a rule that's going to slow everybody down, it will disproportionately affect the slow guys. That's how it works, right? Yeah, Tony says rules don't matter if the track doesn't enforce them. 100%, always. I have literally, I've been talking to a track promoter. This one still talks to me, and he said something about rules, and I was like, so why is this in there? And he's like, well, we don't really enforce it. And I was like, then get it out of there. And he just looked at me, and I was like, what the fuck's the point of having a rule if you're not going to enforce it? And he's like, well, but we might. And I'm like, no. If you're going to let people slide on it all year and then you selectively enforce it, it looks like you're targeting somebody. But if you have a rule in there and you don't enforce it ever, what's the point of having it in there? And he went, fair enough. Now, they couldn't take it out in the middle of the season, but it was gone the next year. If you don't have the time, knowledge, or tools to tech something, what's the point? I went to the racetrack and they had a, God, I don't remember what it was. It was something to do with the rims. Width. It was a width rule on the rim. And I asked them, I was like, how are you going to measure that? And they're like, well, with the tape measure. And I'm like, how are you going to measure it with a tape measure? And they're like, well, we'll have to take tire off the wheel. I'm like, you're going to take tire off the wheel off everybody? Well, no. And I said, if you rip the tire, you're going to replace it? Well, no. I'm like, so have you ever checked the wheel width? Well, no. Okay. They make like the little wheel checker things, right? Oh, I got an extra one of those at the shop. The next week they had one. Funny enough, I seen it hanging up one time. I don't know if it's still there. Spartan Speedway actually has my rim size checker because I had it I got it as part of a tire machine. And I know it was mine because it was broken in a certain way, like a piece was ripped out. I was tech at Spartan for a while, and I had it, and I was checking wheels because we were only allowed 6-inch wheels at the time. So I was checking wheels, and I just left it there at the end of the year. I forgot about it. And then the next year, I was like, I don't really need that. And like 5 years later, they were still using that same thing. So yeah. Full tech the first time at the track, quick tech, and wait before feature, top 3 to 5, full tech after race. Let's talk about that. All right. Let's talk about that. So Will did ask. He says, what's your thoughts on having a front percentage rule? Seems like a lot of cars now are gutting the rear so much and the cars are so light that they go and add a bunch of lead in the front. An easy way to stop that from happening, Will? Stock body rules. Stock frame rail, stock rear. If you have to run a bumper cover and you have to run like on a Neon, if I have to run, you don't necessarily have to have a stock trunk rule, right? But stock rear steel rule. If it had it covered from the factory, it has to be covered on the race car, right? That'll stop that real quick. But that's what happened is guys are basically from the driver's seat back. There's like 3 sticks of tubing and, there you go. I personally, I could see it going either way. I don't like how chopped out some of these cars and how straight some of the bars are that are in them. I think it's asking for somebody to get hurt. It's also really easy to pick the back of those cars up if you get under them, especially you dirt guys. That's not as big a deal on pavement. It's much bigger deal on dirt. But if, you know, it's easy to get under a car and roll it. So it's 6-1. I could understand somebody having a front percentage rule. It's got to make sense again, though. This car right here, Lucy, was like 36% rear, and my fuel cell was right behind the seat where the back seat went, in front of the axle. It was where a factory tank would be. It was just higher built into the car. The battery was actually behind the rear axle, but I still had full stock frame rails, most all the way to the back, still stock quarter panels. I have the speaker shelf. I have a trunk. Like, I still have a rear of the car. I built a rear bumper that was probably heavier than the factory bumper, but it was 36% rear, so it has to make sense. Like a 50-50 never happened, right? So yeah. Now, let me pose this question. There's almost 40 of you watching. Let me pose this question to you. What do you think is a fair tech procedure? Drew's saying full tech the first time at the track, a quick tech and wait before the feature, top 3 to 5 full tech after race. That's his opinion. I don't think it's a bad way to go. When I was tech official for a full season, by the way. So like, I am a little qualified to speak on this, right? By the way, I'm chilly, so we're putting this up. But what I would do is first time at the racetrack or like beginning of the season, we did a full safety tech, seat belts, seats, fuel cells, batteries, cage, stuff like that. I had people that had to fix their seats, that had to fix their belts, that had to fix their cages, that had to fix their batteries, stuff like that, right? So 100% had to go through that. And I made those people change it. And I pissed off a few of them. Well, that's the way it's always been. I don't give a shit how you race the last little bit. You are not sheet metal. I had a guy come through that had 8 sheet metal screws through a plastic battery box with his battery in the trunk with nothing between that battery and him. There was 8 sheet metal screws through a plastic box holding it down. Well, what do you want me to do? Drill a hole here, threaded rod, metal on the bottom, metal on the top. I'll call that good. Brother, I don't care. Like, I don't care. You are not racing the next time. The next time I see you, this is a fix. Your car won't hit the track, right? One guy had 4 self-tapper screws holding the back of a seat to the cage and like 3 of them on the floor. Nope. I've seen all kinds of stuff like that, right? Yeah, and as Pete says, the problem with front percentage is the absolute plethora of different cars that run the class and the shapes and factory percentages. And I don't disagree with you, Pete. That's one where I say it would have to make sense. Like, that's one that would require some study or some input of, what is your front percentage, and just kind of do that survey. And that's why I can't give a good number. Like, I could honestly, like, the new car will likely be much lower rear percentage, So yeah. Now, the other thing I teched was safety gear. You didn't have to have a head and neck back then. You didn't have to have a containment seat back then. I was tech in 2012. Okay. So, right. But belts, helmet, suit, gloves, all that kind of stuff. Okay. I firmly hold the belief that should be teched properly. The amount of cars I see that get tech inspection stickers with seat belts fucked. If your tech inspector doesn't know a seatbelt should be triple wrapped, fuck are you doing? Okay. That person is not qualified to tech anything after that. Okay. So all that stuff, I firmly believe a racetrack should tech before a car is allowed to hit the racetrack. Now, I would like to see, and this is a if I ran a racetrack, right? I want to have multiple techs, and I want one guy who the first race of the night. Now, you can come get your safety tech during preseason practice. I'm going to open the gates early on opening night so that people can just come get safety inspected and be there for 3 hours beforehand so that hopefully we don't hold things up, right? After that, maybe it's week 7 and somebody new shows up, right? I would have them go. I would have a tech guy maybe go to them if need be, right? Say things are really busy, go help them out, okay? Do their safety inspection at their car or something like that. Maybe have them come back, okay? But if you're new, you're getting that inspection. If your seatbelts, if I don't like the way they're mounted, they at least have to be triple wrapped. They need to be fixed for the next week. Some things you could let slide slightly. But if somebody shows up and their seat is self-tapered to the floor, I'm sorry, you are not hitting my racetrack. Your seatbelts have a 1/4-inch bolt in single shear, and it's not even tight, to some sheet metal over here. You are not hitting my racetrack. Your cage is not attached in 3 of the 4 points. You are not on my racetrack. Your helmet is outdated. You're not on my racetrack. You're not wearing gloves. You're not on my racetrack, right? Firmly believe that you should do that. Okay? And a lot of people are in agreement with me and Drew for a lot of this. Marks the safety first time at the track. Safety first time. Safety tech first time. Top 3 to 5 after feature. Winner and maybe 2 for heats. Tim says safety and full tech before practice. Weight before race and top 3 to 5 full tech after race. And Eric says, I agree 100%. Full safety rule inspection at the beginning of the season, and then main rules through the season. And if you get a new car, you get fully checked for safety. Full tech and safety top 5 heats and features. When you talk percentages, most tracks are set up to tech it. You'd think so. Dash Series started running front percentage, and my car was 3% too heavy up front with all stock steel. What was their rule, Pete? Yeah. And then everybody's talking heats and features. What are those qualifying positions illegal guys take up to prevent you from making a race? Lots of tracks have been that way for some time now. Yep. All tracks should tech their tech's knowledge before the season starts. I agree with that. And Joe says SCCA cars get an annual inspection that's essentially all safety stuff: belts, fire suppression, fuel cell, driver gear, all in date. When you pass, you get a sticker for the car. Car cannot go on track without a sticker for the year. Yep. Thing that bothers me most is not having 4 working brakes. That's the second time that got mentioned. And we can talk for a minute about what you guys think are rules that we should and shouldn't have. Like, what are some smart rules and some dumb rules? And then Komatsu from Granby on YouTube, hey, thanks for tuning in. Says, or how about the guys who work in their fire suits, like mechanic overalls, and are smeared in grease and oil? I used to be one of those guys. I'm not gonna lie, I used to be one of those guys. But yeah, it gets hard policing how clean someone's fire suit is. It really does. But I would definitely make some suggestions on that one. So, yeah. Now, a lot of you guys are saying safety tech before, full tech after, with maybe something slight in the middle, heat and features. And, Pete says qualifying. So, what I would do as tech, and this is what I believe in, I teched how I wanted, how I believed it should be, and I still follow this for the most part. Yes, I am drinking a Monster at 9 p.m. No, it will not keep me awake. I would tech, if somebody came in off the racetrack after qualifying and they looked blatantly illegal, or were like suddenly way faster, I'd take a look at a couple things, maybe, way before qualifying, like scale before qualifying, right? And then if anybody ever broke the track record, they would come in and the big things were measured. So at the time when I was teching, we had camber rules, exhaust restrictor rules, weight rules. Those were the big ones. Somebody had to pass all of those. The one time it was an issue, my best friend, Mike Westfall, broke track record, came in, and there were 3 other guys helping me tech. You know, they were all the rear wheel drive guys. So I said, I looked him over. Weight was plenty good by a lot. Camber was the issue. And I said, he has 3, because you were allowed 8 degrees in the right front, 2 degrees everywhere else. And I said, he has 2.8 degrees in the right rear, but he has 0 degrees in the left front. And I talked to the other techs and I said, I'm going to tell him he has to fix the right rear before the feature, you know, before he races. I said, I would like to know what you guys think about letting qualifying stand. And they both agreed that the 0.8 degree in the right rear was not as advantageous as -2 degrees in the left front of what you were allowed. So they allowed it to stay. I stepped back from the decision because I said, my name is on the side of that car. He is slightly above that, right? And they said, nope, we're good. And I told him, I flat out told him, if you are above this after the feature, and I will check, I don't care if you win, I have to DQ you, like, just so you know. And they fixed it. Wasn't an issue. It was the one and only time it was an issue with this car. But I would check track records. I would check anybody who got wicked fast for no reason, right? Because they probably were missing their exhaust restrictor. That was mainly what I checked after tech or after qualifying. I understand Pete's theory, you know, thought process of, hey, if I don't make the A main by 1 position and that guy's illegal, you know, I 100% agree with that. Where I find it hard is if I have 65 cars, I can't pre and post tech them. Significantly harder. So I can understand pulling, like VCTS, top 5 after qualifying come in, they get their weights checked, they get their intake restrictor checked, and I don't know if I think those are the 2 big ones. I don't know if they do anything else. Top 5, no matter what, you get those checked, right? I can understand that. Now, if somebody's blatantly illegal, like, man, that guy's got like 8 inches of sideboard, he's not allowed to have that, you know, or his spoiler's 12 inches, he's allowed 4. 100%, that should be caught, right? However, top X amount after qualifying, I believe, should be teched. That's going to be track and series dependent, right? If I got the space to pull 20 cars and not be in anybody's way, maybe we can tech more, right? I am a firm believer of scaling before every race. So before a heat race, I'm going to have you come over the scale. Maybe not a heat race, depending on how we have time at the track. But if we have time, I'm going to pull you over the scales for the heat race. Before the feature, same deal. We are scaling before the feature. Okay. 100%. If we have a weight rule. Now, this also goes to, what does your weight rule say? Because there are tracks you have to be X amount pre-race, and there are tracks you have to be X amount post-race. Okay. I will be honest with you. I am a big fan of post-race weight. Reason being, listen to some of these old NASCAR stories. Not saying that our guys are necessarily smart enough to do that. I was just listening to a crew chief who was talking about, I want to say it was maybe Kenny Wallace's car or Rusty Wallace's car, one of them. They were filling the left side frame rail with buckshot and weighing the car would be weigh enough. And as they came out, they would pull a plug and they would drain that frame rail of that lead shot. But where it was coming out was through the post that they were jacking it up at, right? So they jacked the car up to look for it all, and they were hiding the hole, okay? I'm not saying our guys would be smart enough to do that, but there would be big advantages to running like E85, right? Because it's a higher burn off. So if I weighed exactly, say our weight had to be 2350. If I weighed 2351 pre-race, I might weigh 2310 after race. I don't know, I mean, figure about 7 to 8 pounds a gallon for fuel, however much you burn off. But if this guy over here is 2380, because he's going to be 2350 after the race, I truly like post-race. Your race car on the property has to be above X amount at all times. Well, fuel burn off, blah, 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 account for it. If my car has to be 2350 and I know I'm going to burn 4.5 gallons of fuel in a 50-lap race, I know that I need to add 4.5 gallons worth of fuel of weight in the car beforehand, right? And I personally, weight, I don't have a variance. That's the number, 2350. There is no plus or minus. 2350. Your variance is, I'll say 2360, and you have to be 2350, right? Okay. I am a fan of post-race. Now, the reason I'm a fan of pre-race for everybody is because the top 5 guys, you see it right here. Rick says, did you weigh after feature on top 5 also? Everybody's worried about the top 5, top 3 or top 5. Every comment here that was talking about it, also top 3, also top 5, also top 3, also top 5, right? Okay. But I'm paying back to last place. So if, Steve over here, and Timmy over there go, I don't have a Wyndham motor. I'm not running up front. Fuck it. I'm going to take 150 pounds out of the car. They might finish 8th instead of 14th, right? Well, if I weigh everybody before the feature, Steve and Tim over here, they're not pulling that weight out, right? So that allows me to assure that we have a really close weight. And listen, if he's dumping 150 pounds of weight out on the track to finish 8th, he's not very good at cheating, right? Okay. So I want to scale everybody beforehand to make sure middle of the pack, back of the pack guys are playing under the same rule set, right? Now, as Rick says, did you weigh after the feature on top 5 also? I would pull top 3 plus 1 random every night we raced. If they passed pre-race weight, I typically wouldn't weigh them post, depending on what we were teching otherwise. What we did tech, now mind you, at the time it had to be stock stuff. No port work, no camshafts. I was one, I was like, listen, I told people I became tech on week 2. I wasn't there week 1, I was week 2. I told everybody the driver's meeting, we got the front wheel drive guys all together. I said, listen, I am not teching for tuned PCMs. I know how to tech for them, but I also know that everybody here is running one. I am not teching for that. I do not believe it's fair. Most everybody at a Neon, if you had a single cam automatic, a dual cam automatic, or just a single cam stick, you had a 6,850 RPM limiter. If you had a dual cam stick shift, you had a 7,250 limiter. So if you had the best motor and the best transmission, you got a higher limiter. Not fair. I'm not teching for that. Okay. It was the one thing I flat out said we're not teching for. So they would come in, and oftentimes what I would do is I would pull those guys in and they'd go, so what are we teching? And there was more than one time where I would ask first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whoever I wanted to, I'd say, we're going to tech A or we're going to tech B. Which one do you want to look at? And they would go, B. And I'd go, cool. And we would look at it. I made people pull fuel injector rails so that I could look down the fuel injector hole to check for port work. It was the quickest, easiest way to be able to check for altered heads. I caught a guy who had an altered head. We pulled valve covers. I had a dial indicator and I checked the lift of the camshaft. I didn't trust the numbers. Because you could change the number etching on the side, right? So we checked that. I looked at clutches. I looked for lightweight flywheels. I looked for exhaust leaks. I looked for all sorts of random stuff. And we did it right out in the open, nose to tail of the cars. And I did the A main and I did the fucking B main. The guy that I caught with the altered head, I took away his B main win. And it sucked, but I did it. And then they were mad at me because I never checked for that again. So it wasn't like hugely ported. It was just they cleaned up a bunch of casting flash, but it was altered. And in the rules, it said stock unaltered, right? But we checked for those sort of things, right? Every week I would check something big. I never tore any heads off, anything like that. I tried to be as minimally invasive as possible. Okay. However, I made sure that we teched the top 3 to 5, and I made sure that I teched one random. And what I would often do is ask the guy next to me, because I would go up and watch the racing, so that I could be, I could give my judgment call. And I'd usually ask the guy beside me, like, who do you think we should, you pick the random. And they would say 8th, 10th, which the fun part is when you pick a guy who's been lapped and they're like, oh, fuck are you teching me for? And I'm like, you're the random. Like, or, I would have it decided before the end of the night, and say like, oh, we're going to tech 9th. Well, then the top 7 were on the lead lap or something like that, but that was after the races. And if we were the first race out, I didn't mind taking longer to tech. We would still be done before the night of racing. If we were the last race out, I tried to pick something a little quicker. When I ask guys to pull the fuel injectors, we're gonna cut the O-rings, we're gonna blah 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 blah. Here's the lube to put it back together so you don't cut your O-rings. And if you put one together and you find that you cut it, you let me know. I'll buy you an O-ring. And I'm like, I always gave him the option. I'm like, you can do that, or you can pull the entire intake manifold off. Oh, I'll pull the injectors. Cool. And that one on a Neon, super easy. It's 2 bolts. Unplug the injectors, 2 bolts, wiggle the fuel rail out of there. It was harder on some of the other cars, but same option. I need to stick the borescope down the cylinder head. You make that possible, right? So yeah. Ron says, what's the difference between stock OEM and stock? Well, maybe everything and maybe nothing. That's one of them. And listen, you are talking to a guy who will argue the gray area that he's living in, right? So much of that is going to be on whoever is writing or interpreting your rules. Okay. If my rules are stock OEM unaltered, no swapping, right? Then that's exactly what that means. That means if it did not come with it on that make, that model from the factory, and you have not touched it, like if you've touched it, then it's not legal, right? But if it's like, must be stock for make and model, cool. The Dodge Neon, for example, right? Okay, well, I could take this Dodge Neon transmission that has a little bit, I could take the HD trannies, which are from the 2nd gens. They're still a Dodge Neon, right? I can use that transmission. Has better gear ratios. But if it says stock OEM for make, model, and year, I can't do that. Then I have 2 options instead of 4, right? So that is one of those, stock terminologies for whoever is writing or interpreting the rules. So, yeah. Now the whole brakes thing. A couple people mentioned it. All 4 working brakes. I am all for that rule. Especially front brakes. If somebody wanted to make, if somebody wanted to make the argument of not needing a right rear, come over here and eat that, you little. Still a couple mice in here. I've got some poison over here, which they've been working over. It's that G, baby. You got any of that gray area? If you know, you know, right? Speaking of, that's actually what this video is about. That video was the right rear brake, right? If somebody wanted to make the argument that the right rear brake isn't necessarily that important for slowing them down, yeah. Even, the rear brakes both, you could make a bit of an argument. But, well, I delete the right front brake and I've never had any problems. Yes, you will. Because you spike the brakes, that thing is going hard left. You have cut your stopping distance by a ton. I do not believe the front brakes should be limited in any way. Okay. And working four-wheel brakes is some gray area. I did a video on it. It's on the page where you can, if you're running drums, you can do some trickery and they grab, but they don't slow you down. Literally and, metaphorically. But like my left rear has always been full strength of every car I've ever done. My right rear, I have limited it since practically day one. And the way that I limit it now, it does work, just not that well, right? We couldn't keep Pops from locking the right rear. He spun out a lot. Drew, did you guys have discs or drums? Just curious. Because I can tell you the way that I do, and look, it's no secret. I made a video about it. What I would do is I would weld the leading shoe on the right rear. I run drum brakes. I'd weld the leading shoe, right? And the trailing shoe, I left alone. And so what would happen is when you got on the brakes, they didn't self-energize. And the right rear had, instead of having them go, it basically went, and it was just like the top half of that one that would grab, right? And so that's what would happen is it had maybe a fifth of the stopping power that it should. So if you jacked the car up and you got hard on the brakes, that wheel would stop. A mortal human couldn't, with a normal check, you couldn't stop it, right? Like you couldn't make it spin. But on the racetrack, and I mean, I'm a guy that uses a lot of brake. It wasn't enough to lock that brake up ever. It never upset the car, right? The first one I ever did was in 2011. Okay. Because before that, I was doing some other stuff that the right rear broke off, and some people seen it at K-Zoo and went, huh. And I went, yeah, I'm not gonna do that again. So I started doing the weld, and I've literally had people where I've showed it to them, like, can you see what I've done there? And they're like, nope, because you just put a tack weld on it, and then you just grind it a little bit, and it just paint it all fits right in, right? That same exact drum and backing plate and everything, still on a race car right now. 13 years later, it's still on a race car. So still works, See, that's your problem, Drew. Drew says all disc, stock disc swap. Drums, baby. Drums, right? And you're showing right here, that's a part of it, right? Because discs work a lot better across the board. Because pieces, you can use a different compound on that corner. You can, but if the car unloads the rear end enough, it doesn't matter what compound you're using back there, it'll lock that corner up because the discs work that much better. At mild pressure, the discs work way better. If you've ever driven an old school muscle car with drum front brakes, you know what I'm talking about, right? I won't put discs on my race car. Both of these race cars have drums. Doc outside. Actually, I think Doc might have discs, but it's going to get drums if it does. They're for a Neon. I'm not saying they are for your Saturns. On a Neon, the backing plate that goes on the knuckle, the disc, the caliper, all of that compared to the backing plate, shoes, wheel cylinder, and drum, the discs are like 4 or 5 pounds heavier. So they weigh more. They work better, right? Never had them stock. So none of those Saturns had drums. I don't know about Saturn. Like I don't know about Saturns. That surprises me that none of them had drums, right? But yeah. So in that instance, if you're watching this and you're like, listen, my car never came with drums. I couldn't swap to drums. You can use prop valves. Okay, Drew, did your cars come with drums then? So even with 4 ports out of the master cylinder, yeah, they had drums. There you go. I promise you, if you run into that issue again, put the drums back on, watch the video I made, do that, and I'm telling you, it works wonders, right? But if you're like, hey, Todd, my car came with discs. It's all I've got. What can I do? Depends on if you're legal or not, right? But you can always put a proportioning valve in that line and turn it so that pressure doesn't get to that wheel. They make inline ones that you can hide really easily because you only need to do it once. You don't need to adjust it all the time. So you can do it and kind of tuck it up out of the way. Todd, isn't that illegal? Possibly. If your rules specifically state no proportioning valves, then yes, technically it's illegal. If your rules just state must have working 4-wheel brakes, no driver, like you can't have it where the driver can reach it, then it doesn't matter, but you can they make inline ones that aren't adjustable that you can get. You could find a way to limit the fluid pressure there. The issue is keeping enough fluid pressure going there to pass. I've seen them check 2 ways. I've seen it where you had to drive out in the grass and spike the brakes and all 4 tires had to lock up. And I've also seen it where you have to you just jack up the car and then you hit the brakes and they try to turn the wheel, right? So those are 2 ways I've seen to tech it. So we can't run proportioning valves, but no rule on which brake line runs to which port. Yeah, that's where things can get, you don't want to fuck up the front brakes because from the factory, your front brakes do anywhere from 60 to 80% of the work. And some of you dirt guys, I hear it all the time. Well, it sets me up going in the corner real good. That's cool. I understand that. But that one time when somebody's in your way and you spike the brakes and you can't stop and you drive right through them, was it worth it? Only you can answer that question, right? But I've seen that where guys have tried to do that, where they've tried flipping and front and rear. Not all cars that works on, because some of these cars, the master cylinder, they work off different size pistons. The piston size in the front or the rear is how you get, because that's the other thing you can do too. You can put different size piston and change the way, like there's a bunch of different ways you can reduce your brake pressure by reducing line pressure or reducing pressure on the pad. And Pete's not wrong. You can run a really shitty pad on the right rear. Listen, glaze that thing over like crazy, right? Find a way to make that pad not grab anything, right? Glaze the rotor over like crazy, machine it with a poor finish that won't grab on anything. Like there are ways you can make it not grab as much if you have discs. But I'll be honest with you guys and gals, if you have drums, it's super easy to do a method that they are likely, because you have working 4-wheel brakes, and they are not likely to jack it up, pull your wheel off, pull your drum off, and inspect. And this is the other beauty of this too. The way I do it by welding that front proportional, you can take the bleeder out and you could put a gauge in there, and I have full pressure at that corner, full pressure. And, you'll never know it. Like you'll never know that that corner's limited unless you find the actual tack weld inside of that drum. So, also, if you're running drum brakes, do not just back them off. It doesn't give you less brakes. Okay. It just gives you more pedal travel before the brakes touch. You can try to argue with me all you want. It's physics. I made a video on that too. It's here on the channel. And I use science by measuring, yardsticks or, anyways, I measure it. All you get is longer pedal travel. So adjust your brakes properly. Okay. One rule that drives me nuts when I see it is a combination of 2 sentences. No rear steer Wheelbase must be the same side to side. Because that tells me that's a holdover from the rear wheel drive guys. Because my wheelbase can be exactly the same, and I can point them tires at a 30-degree thrust angle and drive down the straightaway damn near full lock right. But the wheelbase is the same. But that's a holdover from the solid axle guys where you would have to get some rear steer. Like, that one drives me nuts. I think it's the dumbest rule that goes in a rule book. Like, straight up. I think it's asinine, and it just makes me not respect that track and the rules. So, yeah. Now, as I already said, I like weight rules. And I get, Drew was commenting how he would have to add like 150, 200 pounds of lead to hit 2350. I understand that, Drew. I really do understand, a guy in like a Saturn with, a fairly stock motor. That 150 pounds might sound like a lot. And it is, don't get me wrong. But that goes to, if your base weight's 2350 and we don't have a left side rule, then you could pile drive all that weight around your left front where your percentages get even better. Like 100%. It does, depending on the track, Kalamazoo, Spartan, South Bend probably too. Tracks that M40 tracks where handling is king and not horsepower, like Owasso and Springport and stuff like that. Straight up, that 150 pounds could make you faster, right? But you go to like Springport, extra 150 pounds, it'll slow you down because the handling can't overcome them long ass straightaways, right? So what about stock injection? You like that rule? I think that rule is ambiguous, and I think that it depends on who's enforcing it, because that goes to the whole stock versus stock OEM argument, right? Stock injection, the way I read that, and the way I would argue that, is that this car was fuel injected from the factory. So it was injected from the factory. It was stock fuel injected. It is still fuel injected. So that meets the rule. And it doesn't matter how I'm achieving it, right? However, if the rule is stock OEM fuel injection system only in a stock class, I think it's great. In an outlaw class, I think it's stupid, because then you need to either outlaw tuning or you're just setting some cars at a distinct disadvantage, right? Because if I have, whatever type of Honda I need that I can run Chrome or Hondata or Neptune or what other 8 different programs you have, right? I can tune the car however I want. Us Neon guys, I can get some flashed PCMs and stuff, but I can't just go dyno tune the car, right? Saturns, my understanding is you can't flash a Saturn at all. Some of them don't have rev limiters, but you can't flash them at all. So in an outlaw style class, if I want to build a Saturn, and it's like, hey, I can build the motor, I could port the head, I can get some cams, I can put some compression in it. Why shouldn't they be allowed to throw Megasquirt on, right? Me, I run an aftermarket ECU because I can't do what I want to the stock PCM. I can't go above 8,200, I'm saying you should have to run the size injectors motor comes stock with. See, that's one of them, Will, that's the interpretation of it, stock size fuel injection, stock size fuel injector. In a stock class, I agree with it. I like that rule. In an outlaw style class, I think it's a stupid rule. Because, first off, there's ways around it, because I can just open that bad boy until it's 100%. And 2, instead of running 40 PSI, I'm running 70 PSI. Right? There's ways around it. So in an outlaw style class, like ABC is outlaw. So like if you have an ABC class, you're running outlaw rules. It's just everybody runs under that blanket. So if you don't have a stock class, I don't think stock sized fuel injectors or stock PCMs should be a requirement. Because the slow guys, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. If you're watching this and you're like, I'd be a C-main guy, I'm a slow guy. I don't mean it like that. But the bottom half of the field, they're not even worried about putting bigger injectors in. They're not worried about a PCM. They're not worried about that kind of stuff. You know, they're not going to throw Mega Squirt and 1,000 cc injectors in it because it's all stock, right? But they might go, hey, I can get a tuned PCM, you know? They might be dumb enough to put bigger injectors in when they don't need them. But like the stock style guys, that stuff doesn't matter. The outlaw guys, there's no reason to limit them, you know? And this goes to, you know, I've had a conversation where, you know, well, street stock, you know, it's how you're going to you're going to allow them to tune it. Do you allow your guys to tune the timing and the carburetor? Like, do you allow them to set the distributor where they want and run whatever jets they want? Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? Okay, then why would you stop a fuel injected guy from adjusting the spark and fuel? Well, they can run traction control. Davis Technologies has one that's the size of a quarter for carburetor applications. You know, tech it, right? So yeah, that's I'm all about that. Like, I'm just 100% stock size, stock injection, all that for stock rules. ABC or you know, outlaw, no reason to limit it. So Will, I'm a slow guy. Brother, that's me. So far in the last couple years. I mean, I did finish 5th and 2nd with Dad's car. That wasn't my car. But in my car, I've ran a D main in the last couple years, and that's it. So yeah. How about M40 rules with stock nose and tail? I did not see that part. So yeah. I didn't see that part. So I said this earlier. A stock class, stock tail, stock nose, stock body panels, 100% agreement. If it's expensive to buy your nose, you should have picked a different car, right? Outlaw stuff, again, doesn't matter, right? I liked the VCTS rules that made you keep the stock doors, stock quarters, stock roof, and all that. But I'm okay with front bumpers, tails, you know, even front fenders and hoods. I'm okay with that kind of stuff as far as the outlaw stuff. So, but yeah, I didn't see their rule that you have to have stock nose and tail. So, which I do know that they released 2 different rule sets. I do know that. So I don't know if their outlaw stuff has that, and maybe their stock does or doesn't. But I do know that M40 had 2 different ones. So yeah, and so Will, we talked about that earlier. If it's stock rules where you have to have stock fenders, stock doors, stock quarters, and that, I am okay with running aluminum over that, but it has to basically follow the body lines. You can't come out and down with it. It has to follow the body line down. As long as you have the stock stuff under it, I am okay putting tin over that so that it looks, you know, like it keeps a factory look. Like that's why, like, stock class, I want it to look, I want a casual fan in the stand to go, hey, that's a Dodge Neon, instead of going, what the fuck is that? Like, you know, so yeah. And Kyle says, dude took a Neon to the front at Bristol and calls himself slow. Brother, that was Dad's car, number 1. Number 2, in the last 3 seasons, at the end of the year, I ran a D main. That's it. So I'm just saying. I was the 3rd slowest qualifier at Michigan Cup the year before that. So is my car stock looking? Yeah, honestly, so trying to think. The white one for sure, like the EF, the little older one, like that one to me looks stock, stock enough. Like it looks like a Civic. The thing I didn't like, and it was a personal preference, was the Dominator rear bumper. Whichever car you had that on, I didn't care for that bumper. That's a personal thing with that bumper. Like I didn't think it necessarily fit a Civic. But like the sides, yeah, like they're fairly boxy. The Zero car with the EG, like, yeah, well, fairly stock. And that goes to, you're not trying to run those cars as like Hornets, you know, like stock cars. So like that's the whole thing for me. If you run an outlaw class, if you run an ABC that allows you to do that stuff, as long as it looks clean, like that's what I want people to do. Cause like I am trying, This is going to be my goal for this year. My theme for this year is work on your stuff, make it look nice. Like, if you put an aftermarket body on it, make it look nice. Like, because there's some dudes out there, like, I'm going to do one of these shows. It's all about tin work and how to not do really shitty tin work. Because there's some of you guys, like, I worked on this Prelude one time that every single panel I looked at, I got a small nick somewhere just for looking at it. So, yeah. Drew says everything on mine stock except for the nose. And yeah, I like, so my car, Lucy, had stock fenders, stock doors, stock quarters. I have a rear bumper on it. And that bumper come up for the trunk lid. So, but I that much of the stock trunk lid, like on top, and then stock front fenders, and then aftermarket front bumper. And all I did was I took the stock fenders and I pushed them out a little bit. And like I loved the way the car looked. I still do. But I've seen some guys that hack on bumpers. Like, I like a lot of you, but God, some of you need to work on putting stuff on the cars. I'm just saying. So yeah, Todd, we're bang bangers. Yeah, listen, that was one of the better shows, like most watched shows I've ever done. The amount of minutes I got off that. So yeah, I see it right now. I get cuts every time I step in the garage. Yeah, dude, just Pete. Listen, man, just thinking about it, I'm pretty sure I got blood. Like, look right there, Pete. Like you can't like. I got a right there. Just from thinking about it, I gotta. That's just a. Pete did all that after I started on the show of rounding corners. So, but I've pretty much said what I needed to say tonight about rules. If you guys have some questions, comments, concerns, want my opinion on something like that, feel free to ask away. I'm not saying we got to go away right this minute. I am saying I'm not sitting here another half hour because my toes are frozen. I got to get feet warmer. Honestly, what I need to do is get stuff cleaned out of the studio because it's much warmer in there. So that's what we're probably going to do here real soon. We're gonna do the tech shows out here because I can set heaters up and stuff and like get going. I ordered some dry erase markers, but I didn't have time today to set it up. So next tech show we do from in here, we'll like be standing up. But yeah. Anyways, so yeah, 100%. If you guys got something you want to talk about, throw it out there. Yeah. Which I don't know if I am just popular or what, but my phone has blown up too. I'm sure you guys can hear it, but I have gotten just buzz. Fully charged up. So many text messages. Anyways. All right. Well, there's no huge pressing matters, it looks like. So I want to thank you all for being here. I've just screwed up the last couple days, missed a couple posts. Been working the last couple day or two. We tore our bathroom apart. And I was trying to get it done the last couple of days. So thankfully we got it done. It was the shower surround and all that. So thankfully we got it all done. I'm gonna take a shower tonight. I haven't in a couple of days. You can probably smell me from there. But we are going to. I'm going to continue trying to post every day the rest of this month. So keep a lookout for that. And yeah, we'll go live Thursday. I still want to try to have a guest, and hopefully I can get my poop in a group, and I will get somebody that we can have a guest. And if we do, I'll be in the studio. I'm gonna set it up so I can be in there, so I can be warmer. It's getting cold, and that thing's well insulated. So yeah, that's basically what I got for tonight. I appreciate you all coming on. If you are watching this from a racetrack that we talked about tonight, I want to help you. I don't want to be completely negative. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just picking on you. I would love to help you write some common sense rules. And I might not want all of them. They might slow me down. I am all for that. I am truly willing to help talk to you and be your technical consultant. You ain't even got, I don't have to put my name on it. I don't need the glory. I don't need the fame. I just want to see you have a huge car count. And I don't give a shit what track you're from. I want to see you have a big car count of front wheel drives. I want to help you succeed in having front wheel drives. I don't care what our past is. I don't care if you've told me you don't like these cars before. I don't care if you tell me I hate these cars, but I want 80 of them. I will help you try to get 80 of them. I want cars to have more places to race. I want rules to be fairly unified, and I want them to make sense. So I want to help. So if you're watching this and you need help, you think I'm picking on you, reach out to me. I am happy to help. So I really am. That's what I got for tonight. Thank you guys and gals. I love y'all. I'm going to see y'all real soon. I promise. So have a great night.